Hi, this is Galen Cranz. I thought you might like to know something about my own personal journey with scoliosis, my struggles with exploration, and a little report on what works and what hasn't worked. And in the end, I'll share with you in the last video some comparison of drawings of my x-rays of what my spine used to look like versus what it looks like now. And I think you'll probably agree with me that it shows a pretty positive change. I wanted to share all this because I'm at a stage in my life where I think it's appropriate to share my many years of experience. I actually did tell myself when I was a teenager that if I ever found a way to cope with this condition, that I would really owe it to others to share what I learned. So here I am, finally sharing. Let's get started. First, there was discovery. Like, whoa, I'm 12 and I'm going through the growth spurt of adolescence, and my mom discovers scoliosis one day when I bend over, and she says, stand up straight, and the rest is history. In my day, they hadn't yet had scoliosis screenings in schools. So it was my mom who discovered it, and then she took me to the family doctor, who said there wasn't too much you could do except the standard treatments, if it gets to a certain point of severity, would be bracing or surgery. Well, my family had a long history, but going back to my grandmother, of relying on osteopathy for back care. So they were pretty skeptical about surgery. And bracing to a teenager, wearing a big fat brace 24 hours a day, didn't seem very appealing. So I probably voted against that. And I think intellectually there was some merit to that, because I've since been told that by a physician whose daughter had scoliosis, so he was paying a lot of attention to the research on the subject, and he told me about a study that compared people in a brace to people not being braced, and 25% of both groups got better, 25% of both groups got worse, and 50% of both groups stayed the same, which means that the brace did really nothing, because it's external and working on the rib cage, but the problem originates somewhere deep in perhaps the nervous system, somewhere very deep in the spine and the information systems in our body that tell us how to grow. So it made sense to me that bracing wouldn't be a way to go. That left physical therapy for us as an alternative. And at first, because of our family connection with osteopathy, we went to an osteopath who put me on traction, like my head was put in a device that held it, some cloth straps and whatnot, and there was another one put around my hips, and then this machine would stretch me apart. Well, that hurt, and so I wasn't a good student of that. I didn't conform. So then we tried another form of physical therapy, which was exercises, and that also was not particularly effective for me. In the end, you're going to see that certain kinds of physical therapy might be much more effective, but just straight, like, let's go in there and exercise this thing away, probably leaves something to be desired. We were also told that I should swim, but the island community where I grew up was rural, and we didn't have a public swimming pool, and so I never got to do that form of physical therapy or exercise until I got to college, and then I took great advantage of it from then on, and it's been really helpful, but not in those early teenage years. Psychologically, of course, it's a shock when you discover that you have something like this, and there's shame involving your asymmetries, because you're not going to look like all the other girls, and I think there's probably some deep fear that you won't be attractive to the opposite sex, and that you won't be admired by all your classmates. You'll be looked down on maybe, and you want to look, great. So there's shame. And in addition, at that time, I didn't know anybody with scoliosis. And none of the therapists we talked to directed me to anybody with scoliosis. So I felt quite alone with this strange condition. And I once asked my mother to sit with me while I did my exercises so I wouldn't feel quite so estranged, like from the family rhythms. And I think it was psychologically too painful for her to see her lovely daughter, having this difficulty. So she got up in the middle of the first session where I had asked her to sit with me, and she never, ever returned again. I also had to leave school early in the 7th and into the 8th grades in order to catch the ferry, in order to get to physical therapy offices before closing hours. So I was actually taken out of the group a little bit as well. So the whole story for me was, it was a lonely, isolating condition. And that's one of the reasons why I want to have a website to bring people together in workshops for mutual support about what it's like to live with our particular condition. In retrospect, I think the family decision not to pursue surgery was a good one, because I wouldn't have been able to change my spine as dramatically as I have had I been fused. I'm also glad I didn't have it, because we were not aware at that time that very often, another 15 years, say, a second surgery may be required, because where the fusion ends and flexion returns in the spine, all the forces are at that point, and it becomes extremely painful. So they have to fuse a few more vertebrae. So I'm, even though I have a very severe scoliosis, I'm grateful that I didn't go that route. So let's move on now to the next video, when I went to college and I had a lot more resources.